Hi everyone, this video is about measures of variation, and the problem that we're using the data from is from Elementary Statistics by Mario F. Triola. It's found on page 107 and it's exercise number 9. So our problem talks about the gross amounts earned by some Harry Potter movie. So we've got our raw data here and we're going to calculate some measures of variation from it. First up is our standard deviation. So the formula for standard deviation is S is equal to the square root of the sum of x minus x bar squared all over n. And that really is to say that it's the sum of all deviations from the mean squared divided by the number of data points that we have. And standard deviation is really useful for fitting things to a normal curve or things like that. So normally we would make a little chart. I've sort of laid out the way it would look if you're going to do this all by hand for you. So you take I have a column for your x's, a column for your mean, a column for your x's minus your mean, and then a column for those values squared. So the first thing you need to calculate is the mean for any set of data. So I've done that for you here for this one. So for this particular data set, the mean is approximately equal to 16.4. And that's what we're going to use for the rest of our calculations. So I took the liberty of filling out the chart the way we would all do it by hand. And as you can see, we have all our data values in the leftmost column. The mean, we calculated 16.4 in the second column. We subtract across to get the third column, x minus x bar, and then we square those values to get our fourth and final column, x minus x bar squared. So now what we do is we add up all the values in the fourth column and we get the sum of those deviations from the mean squared. And that value is equal to 2,741.24. So now that we know that, we can plug that value into the formula, divide by n, and take the square root, and we'll have our standard deviation. So now if we plug everything we know into the standard deviation formula, we get the square root of 2741.24 divided by 14. And that works out to be 13.99, or we could call it 14. Another measure of variation we can use is the variance. And the variance is just the standard deviation squared. So we can either not take the square root of the standard deviation as we're calculating that by hand, or if we already know the standard deviation, then the variance is simply equal to the standard deviation squared. So for our calculated standard deviation of about 14, all we have to do is square that to find out our variance, and that is equal to 196, approximately. We've done a little bit of rounding. So the last measure of variation I want to talk to you about is the range. And the range is simply the highest data value, the max, minus the lowest data value, the min. So for our particular data set, we would have 58 minus 4, and that's equal to 54. So our range is 54. And with the range, we can use the range rule of thumb. Now the range rule of thumb is a estimate of the standard deviation, and it generally should only be used if the book tells you to use it in lieu of the standard deviation, but it generally has a little bit too much error to really be used as a standard deviation, but we'll calculate it anyway. So we know our range is 54, and the range rule of thumb tells us to divide that by 4, and that'll give us an estimate of the standard deviation. So 54 divided by 4 is equal to 13.5. And while that's not terribly far away from our standard deviation that we calculated by hand, it's still not quite perfect. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and the next video we're doing is the measures of center and variation on your TI-83 or 84 calculators, and it'll save you some time knowing how to do this with the calculator instead of doing it out by hand. Thanks.